Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for being here. I know many of you have had some very long days this week, so I'll have just a few comments and be glad to take your questions. First, I want to congratulate Representative Todd Richardson, a well-respected and talented legislator, on his election as Speaker of the Missouri House. I spoke to Todd last night and told him that I was committed to working with him next session and in the interim to restore trust and move the state forward. Earlier this year, at the beginning of the session, I talked about the values that we share as Missourians and encouraged the General Assembly to rise above partisanship and do the right thing by the working families of our state. Because we're all here for the same purpose, to represent the people of Missouri, folks who are working hard to make ends meet, provide for their families, and build a brighter future for their children. And during this session, we were able to reach across the aisle to get things done on a host of important issues. I'm eager to review the legislature's bill to reform municipal courts, a top priority I called for in my State of the State address. We also took steps to strengthen our agriculture industry with a bill to help dairy farmers and encourage more young people to pursue careers in agriculture. Last week, I signed legislation restoring caps on non-economic damages against health providers, a reasonable, bipartisan solution to a long-standing and vexing challenge. The bonding package is another example of bipartisan progress. Everyone understands the critical role of higher education in maintaining our competitiveness in a global economy and giving our students the skills they need for the jobs of the future. So last year, after the legislature passed additional bonding capacity, we reached out to legislators and higher education institutions around the state to chart a clear path forward. Our public colleges and universities identified their top priorities for bringing higher education facilities up to the level our students deserve. 6 months later, that bill is on my desk, and it's going to create thousands of good jobs in every corner of our state while strengthening Missouri's position as a leader in college affordability and quality. On the budget, again, there was more agreement than disagreement. From providing record funding for K-12 education to investing in small businesses, the legislature passed the budget on time and answered my call for smart, strategic investments that will pay dividends for years to come. For example, the budget includes the spending authority needed for us to continue moving forward on a new Fulton Mental State Hospital, replacing one that opened in 1851. I called for it, the legislature passed it, and in a couple of weeks we'll be breaking ground on that new state-of-the-art facility. I also want to thank the Senate for upholding my veto of a bill that would have unfairly denied working people the unemployment insurance benefits they've earned in the workplace. Now, you should make no mistake, we don't always agree. Cooperating doesn't mean compromising on your principles. When the General Assembly passes legislation, it would take our state backwards, like they did this past week. I won't hesitate to use my veto pen to protect the interests of the people of the Show Me State. The bill to make Missouri a so-called right-to-work state would stifle our economic growth, weaken the middle class, and even subject Missouri employers to criminal and unlimited civil liability. I'll lay out my objections in greater detail in my veto message, but it's clear that attacking workers and threatening businesses is the wrong economic development strategy for our state, and it's not what Missourians sent us here to do. The legislature also left some major unfinished business that, for the good of our state, must be addressed when they return next year. That includes giving working people access to affordable health care, funding our roads and bridges, updating the state statute governing deadly force to be consistent with constitutional requirements and U.S. Supreme Court precedent, and finally, reforming our ethics laws. Now, before I take questions, I want to talk briefly about the events of the past week. The state capitol should represent the best of Missouri, a place where public servants carry out the people's business transparently and ethically, and where young men and women learn how their government works without fear of harassment, intimidation, or other inappropriate conduct. Now, there are many good people in this building. upstanding individuals who are here to serve the public interest. But sadly, this past week has been a jarring reminder of what happens when people lose sight of what they're here to do and who they're here to serve. Now that the session has come to a close, members of the General Assembly face a choice of whether the past few days will simply reinforce the low expectations many Missourians already have for the legislative process, or whether these events will serve as a wake-up call to do better and act in ways that will make Missourians proud. That's why I hope that as they return to their districts this summer, members go home and get some perspective, spend time with their families, talk with their constituents, and recommit themselves to values that call them to public service and the people they're here to represent. Not lobbyists and special interests, but ordinary Missourians who work hard, go to church, look out for their neighbors. The auto worker on the line in Clay Como, the student working his way through school in Kirksville, the veteran starting her own business in St. Louis. We're here to deliver on their priorities: balanced budgets, good paying jobs, quality schools, strong inclusive communities, and a government that reflects the highest ethical and moral standards. These are priorities I've fought for as governor over the past 6 years, and they're priorities I'll continue to fight for in the months and years ahead. Thank you, and I'll be glad to take